Hello, my dear friends. Today I'm talking about stationary planets in natal chart. Slow and stationary planets are perceived as debilitated, afflicted, or malefic. For the most part, they are considered to be weak. But some astrologers, both ancient and modern, interpret stationary planets in quite a different way. In Ptolemy Tetrabiblos, we read that stationary planets are akin to rising planets in terms of their potency. Ptolemy believed that the stationary planet was arguably one of the most powerful planets in a chart. He used to write that the effect will be strengthened and augmented by their magnitude or stationary position. How we interpret stationary planets may also depend on the type of chart we are examining. For example, in a horary chart, the stationary planet motion is said to prevent further developments. This makes logical sense because a horary chart is calculated for a specific moment in time. Vettius Valens, for example, was of the view that such planets were debilitated and weak, but other astrologers point out that in Indian tradition, retrograde and stationary planets were considered to be stronger than when they move direct. So, which is the reality actually? If we think of the zodiac as being a journey through time, then when planets are moving retrograde, they are in a sense venturing back into the past before resuming forward motion once more. When they are stationary, the present moment is therefore magnified, accentuated, or highlighted. Time appears to stand still. Those people born when the planet is stationary and appearing to change direction are likely to embody the nature of this planet to a great extent, for better or worse. This suggests that planets are indeed strengthened by being stationary. There is a powerful urge to express a stationary planet, but its lack of motion means that it takes a great deal of stamina and time to get results. A stationary retrograde planet tends to be more challenging than the stationary direct one. But whether we view these planets in a positive or negative light, whether they are capable of impending or empowering, may ultimately depend on other factors, such as sign placement or aspects to the stationary planet that can aid our interpretation. Still, other questions remain. What orb or exactness should we apply to stationary planets? In other words, how slow does a planet have to be for its slower motion to be considered significant? And what about the so-called shadow periods? These are the times before and after a station when the planet is traveling direct but moving over the same degrees it traverses when retrograde. Let's take an example of Mars. Because Mars is associated with forward momentum, drive, action, and activity, its stations can denote critical times when progress comes to a halt. All through stationary Mars can impede one's energy and drive. It can also produce incredible stamina and staying power. There are a number of great athletes with Mars retrograde, including Steffi Graf, Billie Jean King, and Tiger Woods. If a retrograde or stationary Mars only blocks or thwarts the action of Mars, how is it that we find it in the charts of elite sport champions? We also know that Mars is associated with the medical profession, surgeons. In the chart of both Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, Mars is stationary direct. The beauty of researching stationary planets is that you don't need accurate birth time, nor even accurate places of birth. Still, because planets move at different speeds and have synodic cycles that vary in length, the orb we apply to stations should take this into account. Using a planet's average speed is one way to do this. In the Solar Fire astrological software, the average daily speeds for Mercury and Venus are the same as for the Sun, 59 degrees and 8 minutes. Using Solar Fire as our example, planets are flagged with an S when they are stationary. And thanks to the developers of this fantastic program, we are offered a choice in the orb we set for stations. See the diagram, it's a screenshot of preference settings for stationary planets. Option 1 is the default setting. Option 4 takes into account each planet's speed and their different cycles. Options 1, 2 and 3 don't allow for the different speeds of the planets. The only option that does it is the fourth one. This setting lets you choose a percentage of a planet's average speed so that any planet moving slower than this will be flagged as. Some astrologers use 30%. This means whenever a planet is moving slower than 30% of its average speed, it will be flagged with an S. This means stationary. In the case of Mercury, using the 30% rule gives you a window of 4 or 8 days per station, which might account for any kind of so-called shadow effect. Rather than having a shadow of 6 weeks, you have a period of between 4 and 8 days when Mercury is considered to be within orb of station or slow enough to have a noticeable effect. Keep in mind that this is a percentage of average speed, and average speeds are much lower than a planet's fastest motion. In the case of Venus and Mercury, you may want to consider factoring in an extra day before and after the S appearance in chart to account for possible variations in the way average speeds are calculated. As an example, you have the chart of Christopher Reeve, tragic accident using the default setting of a 4-day orb for stations. Mercury appears retrograde and asteroid Hygieia is direct. Hygieia was a goddess of health and healing and can be considered a feminine counterpart to Chiron, astrologically point of view. If you calculate this even chart using the 30% rule, both Mercury and Hygieia are flagged S, which highlights the fact that both planets were about to station and were therefore significant factors at the time. In the same time, also, in Reeve's natal chart using the standard 4-day orb, Hygieia would be flagged R, but using the 30% rule, it's flagged S. See the charts here. At the time of his accident, the transiting Mercury station in Gemini was in tied opposition to his natal Mars in Sagittarius, which sits in his 5th house. With the transiting Mercury station powerfully positioned in his own sign of Gemini, opposing Reeve's natal Mars, we have an extra factor that suggests the potential of an accident. Some moments in time are indeed more significant than others. And don't forget that Mars in Sagittarius is linked with the risk of accident even when you ride a horse, because Sagittarius is half man, half horse. You can take one by one the planets to check this rule of 30% orb for stationary planets for the speed, and use a database that you have, and you will find some significant information. Stationary planets or slow-moving planets, they really are the most powerful planets after all. Try also to see in your chart if you have any stationary planet or in your relevant events in your life, if these stationary planets in transit have been in conjunction or some other aspects with your natal chart planets. Until next time, I wish you all the best. Bye bye.